Are dogs delicious?
Mm.
Do they taste yummy? This is one of the many questions we'll be asking on today's Liberty podcast, you lucky people, with Tom Laird and
Antony Sammeroff.
The Madcap ANCAP.
Episode 54.
Episode 54 already. And as you know, last week we asked, was Sam Harris talking out his arse? And we got to grips with that one. Today,
by the way, thank you to everyone who tweeted our last podcast on the theme of Sam Harris to Sam Harris. If you haven't yet tweeted last week's podcast on the economic illiteracy of Sam Harris to Sam Harris, please get on Twitter and do it for us. Thank you.
Indeed. Thanks for that, Antony. So today, Are Dogs Delicious? We're also going to be discussing, is Jeremy Corbyn mad, bad, or dangerous to know? And we're also going to be discussing, I think I'm going to lead with this one today. It's an article in the Sunday Times of last Sunday, the 2nd of July. I'll just let you see the headline here. Okay, it's Rogue SAS unit accused of executing civilians in Afghanistan. And if it turns out to be true, it could be mega, because as you know, there's been investigations into abuses in Afghanistan and Iraq before. Most of them have been actually proven to be false, sort of ambulance chasing lawyers, trying to, make a buck out of basically taking soldiers to court. And this has kind of got a resonance for me because I'm an ex-soldier. But I'm going to read you some. It says, claims of cover-up as Afghan investigation is wound down. Members of Britain's Special Air Service are alleged to have covered up evidence that they killed unarmed Afghan civilians in cold blood and falsified mission reports in a potential war crimes scandal that the government has tried to keep secret. Who would have thought the government would try to keep something secret?
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah. The allegations have emerged in a classified multi-million-pound Royal Military Police investigation, Operation Northmoor, which has been run from a secure underground bunker in Cornwall, ain't secret anymore, for the past year and a half. Senior military police and defence sources with a detailed knowledge of the investigation have said that evidence gathered of war crimes by the SAS is credible. Part of the inquiry is said to have focused on a particular SAS squadron, which has been described as a rogue unit. A source close to Operation Northmoor says there is strong evidence that unarmed Afghan civilians suspected of being Taliban insurgents were murdered rather than captured during night raids on their homes. In one 2011 case under investigation, Special Forces soldiers are alleged to have handcuffed and hooded some of the victims before later shooting them dead. It goes on to say, the source said there was a desire in the MOD just to make it go away.
Sure.
He believes officials were desperately trying to avoid any of the detail of the accusations getting into the press and thereby undermining their view of national security, public trust, and work with allies. A senior Whitehall source revealed that the MOD and the Army's most senior generals had regarded the evidence of mass executions emerging from Operation Northmoor as, quote, credible and extremely serious. The source said it has been seen as a potential disaster for the government, so there were attempts to keep it under control by reducing the scale of the investigation. Right. And I'll just finish up on this part here. Johnny Mercer, a Conservative MP who served with Special Forces in Afghanistan, okay, it says served with them, I don't know if he actually was in them, led a parliamentary inquiry that recommended shutting down the Iraq war crimes investigation, which he described as a witch hunt based on spurious allegations from lawyers. But he said that the serial murders evidence appears different. He added, if UK service personnel come forward to blow the whistle on behaviour on operations that they are not comfortable with, military leadership has a duty to deal with that in a fair but very firm manner. We must be clear that unlawful behaviour is not acceptable. I hope my efforts to protect our servicemen and women from spurious claims has not been used as a cover to legitimise unprofessional behaviour in operations. I don't know, I hate that expression, unprofessional. I mean, what does that mean? I guess Adolf Eichmann was extremely professional. So yeah, okay.
And the unlawful as well. It's like, who's setting up the law?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're not even sure if the war itself is lawful.
Well, exactly.
In some regards. I mean, the reality of this situation, I mean, you're going to obviously let us in on the inside scoop.
No, but please do.
But we've just gone into this country, right? Most very threadbare grounds. They weren't, the hijackers on 9/11 didn't originate from Afghanistan. Broadly speaking, most of them were from Saudi Arabia, right? These are just random people that are kind of poor and live in a very backwards country. And, you know, people from, it's basically the equivalent of aliens coming from outer space with superior technology landing in Scotland and like killing a bunch of us.
Yeah.
Right.
And trying to impose their values.
Yeah, because, you know, they looked at what our government did in Iraq and Afghanistan and said their government's a bunch of war criminals.
Yeah.
So we're going to come in, and then, you know, extrajudicially killing of civilians, because, you know, a judicial killing of civilians by enemy occupying forces. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like aliens coming from outer space and you know, tasing you and your loved ones.
Yeah. It's well, okay. I mean, let's start from the beginning. This one. Okay, I served in Northern Ireland, as you know. There was a whole kind of dirty war going on undercover in Northern Ireland at that time as well, and you know, this is the inevitable consequences of going. Whenever you get involved in a war, it's a myth to think, you know, it's just not some sort of Ealing comedy, you know, where soldiers go about with, like, you know, their tin hats and a jaunty angle on their head and smoking woodbines and being cheeky chappies, right? This shit is real. So you get involved in a war, this kind of stuff is an inevitability. By the way, these are allegations, but should they prove true, I don't see why it's any more horrific than just the straightforward of get involved in Afghanistan in the first place. And my concern would be that the government and the army does what it always does in these circumstances, which is pick a few individuals and hang them out to dry. Right. Instead of looking at why we're there in the first place. I mean, there's precedents for this. I mean, you look back even to the Boer War. We put on trial three Australians for shooting Boer prisoners of war. The fact of the matter was, and it's been subsequently proven, that the order to kill Boer prisoners of war came from Kitchener. But obviously Kitchener denied that. The British were keen to show the Boers that they were an honest broker and that they could be trusted to run things. So therefore they made a show trial in a kangaroo court and hung 3 Australians out to dry for shooting Boer prisoners of war. Now, as the character that Edward Woodward plays during the film Breaker Morant, which is about that very thing. It's based on a book called Scapegoats for the Empire by George Whitten, which is worth reading, because there's so much contemporary resonance. You'll see phrases in that book and hear phrases in that film like "it's a new kind of war." Right? And you hear that. They say that about every war. This is a new kind of war. And we're fighting against people who are not dressed in uniform. You know, the Boers were not dressed in uniform. They didn't play by the normal rules of war. They shot at them from paddocks. They shot at them from farmhouses. You know, they done hit and run raids. Basically, very much a guerrilla war like what the Taliban are fighting against us in Afghanistan. And when they cashiered these guys, you know, one of the things they said in court was, "Look, well, did we shoot Boer?" Yeah, we did. You know, it's customary in a war to kill as many of the enemy as you possibly can. And this idea that we have that you can fight some sort of clean war is utter bullshit. Right. War is the ultimate madness. War is, as Antony says, judicial killing, judicial murder. You kill people. Now, I'm not saying don't get in a fight. But I'm saying if you get in one, you better know what your objective is and you better know what's involved. And what it involves is killing people, and killing people in the most brutal and horrible ways. And the longer the war goes on, the more protracted it is, and it becomes a war of attrition, and especially guerrilla war, you cannot avoid that kind of stuff. It's going to, and by the way, these are allegations that I stress, but should it prove to be true, my concern is that they're just going to hang out a few guys to dry. And if it does also prove to be true, it could actually be the end of the Special Air Service as a regiment, because there's there's a tendency to say, you know, if you wipe the name, then you can probably wipe the shame. So you get rid of the unit and then you start again from fresh because it's been that tainted. But these look like serious allegations.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. But that's fucking
That's
war.
what happens.
That is what will happen. You know, when you saber rattle and say we should get involved in this war or that war, then be aware that, you know, okay, the SAS are killing civilians. We're dropping drones on fucking villages and wiping out entire villages of civilians. Is anybody kicking and screaming about that? Oops, sorry, you know. It's not really our fault.
Damage.
Yeah, it's collateral damage.
Right.
Well, these guys at the SAS are killing these. And by the way, civilians, that's a tough call sometimes in a guerrilla war. I don't know if they're just randomly selecting people and doing them in, or whether it's just faulty intelligence.
People can go nuts when they're put in that position where you have to shoot at people and be fired at.
Yeah.
You know, after a while, it's going to take its toll, and certain kind of characters will end up doing things they never thought they'd do, not recognizing themselves, because it warps your personality.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? I think
you're under stress, severe stress for days, months at a time. And the tragedy of these events is that they're seldom done by abnormal men, but they're done by normal men in abnormal situations. And to judge soldiers in the field by civilian standards is an absurdity. But you better know when you get involved in a conflict that this shit's going to happen.
Out to do this. And then there's another school of thought, the objectivists at the Ayn Rand Institute. They have a view that if you get in a war, it's like, fuck him, basically. You shouldn't think about any ethics at all. You should just do whatever you need to do. You shouldn't go out of your way to kill civilians, but you shouldn't worry about killing civilians either. I saw Yaron Brook, who I think's very good on some subjects, be all like, you know, bomb the infrastructure. And this is like, it's so irrational for my mind, because they're so individualist on economics.
Yeah.
And when it comes to foreign policy, they're just like, well, you know, if you live in that country, then even if it's a dictatorship and they'll kill you if you rebel, you're responsible for that government being in power. So you know, all of a sudden the collective punishment comes out. So I guess the thing is, what I think, you know, it only took September the 11th to convince America to go to war on Afghanistan and Iraq. Yeah. No, I don't mean to diminish it by saying only, but that was one attack. When you think about the number of attacks that have been waged in this region, the amount of resentment and hatred that this is stirring up and putting you know, as you know, Ron Paul famously brought it to people's attention, putting us more at the risk of blowback. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case in this condition, because I mean, these are people without the resources to do any damage to us. But you know, people can. It's just it's on no level is this rational. It's, in fact, it's suicide. You know, and in terms of, I'll get into controversial territory here, but you know, refugee crises and things like that, that are sparked off by these conflicts. And then you have the alt-right saying, you know, all the stuff about immigration and things like that. Well, you know, one leads to the other. It's like a wheel that keeps on turning. You do not, if you fight fire with fire, all you get is a bigger fire. But I've got a question to ask you, given that we're sort of agreed that it's probably impossible to write a clean fight a clean war. Should there be international standards? Should there be and you know, on the other extreme, it's just like the Ayn Rand Institute's view, which is if you go in, just do what you've got to do to win a decisive victory. It doesn't matter how many eggs you smash, as long as you get that omelet made.
Well, you know, the reason we have conventions like the Geneva Convention, for example. Now, the Geneva Convention is something, there are certain countries that signed up to the Geneva Convention. The Taliban are not signed up to the Geneva Convention. So when the Royal Marine shot that Taliban fighter, and he was a Taliban fighter, right? He was wounded He said they just decided to finish him off and said, "There you go, shuffle off this mortal coil. You can't. There's nothing that you wouldn't do to us." And he said to the guys who were with him, "You know, guys, this is you never seen this. This is expressly against the Geneva Convention, and it is." But you know, British fought wars against the Boers. We fought wars against, you know, the fuzzy wuzzies, we used to call them, in Sudan, the dervishes. We didn't give them any Geneva Convention, you know, we just blew the shit out of them. So I think with the convention, there are certain things that are beneficial to both sides. For example, you know, don't poison water supplies.
Right.
That makes perfect sense, because even though you're in retreat, tomorrow you might actually be in advance again. And when you go forward, that same water supply that you've just poisoned, now you can't use it. You've also got forward units, reconnaissance guys and special forces who are going to be way behind the main bulk of the army. They're coming back and they're going to need water. So, you know, poisoning water is just a bad idea for everybody. However, it just depends on how badly you're getting beaten. You know, if you think you're on your way down and it's not going to, you know, there's no benefit, you're fucked anyway, basically. Then all these kind of conventions go to rat shit. You do whatever you think. Yeah, you do whatever you think to survive. So I don't think it's bad to have these conventions, but you have to sort of get a grasp on reality as well. Yeah.
Stay out the war unless it's in your defence. It's a war of defence, basically.
Just think about these things before we go to war, because that kind of stuff will be a reality. And you know, I'll say finally this: how many civilians do you think the Allies killed in their invasion of Europe when they went to drive the Germans out of France and Holland? I urge you to actually take a look at that. The civilian casualties just in D-Day +10 was absolutely horrific. We probably killed more French in the first part of the D-Day landings than the Germans did in their entire occupation of France. Now, you can make the moral argument that we're there to fight fire, but the fact of the matter is we killed a shit load of civilians. Barack Obama sent troops to Afghanistan knowing that there was going to be collateral damage. He gets a peace prize. He gets a Nobel Peace Prize.
They have them in packets of cereal now.
Right, okay, I'm sure they do. So he gets a peace prize, and yet if these guys are found guilty, or, you know, it's discovered that these allegations are true, they'll probably hang them out to dry and they'll be evil men, whereas the guys who actually took them into the war in the first place will remain untouched.
Yeah, no one's been put on trial. No one's seriously. The leaders of states can only be tried in their own courts, more or less.
Yeah,
and
it's a victor's courtroom.
Sure. Yeah. To anyone viewing, if you want to chirp in, there's a few of you, so we do monitor the video chat, so let us know what you think. Now, someone who was against the war, was he against the Afghanistan war?
I think he was, yeah.
But is not a big fan. You're not a big fan of.
Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is dangerous. Now, I have to admit, when he first came on the scene, you know, when he made his appearance a couple of years back and he became the leader of the Labour Party, I kind of had a grudging admiration for the fact that he was principled. I think his principles are fucked up, but he at least had some principles. And, you know, he was kind of this avuncular old lefty on a bike, you know, and kind of, you know, it was all very quaint. But that's kind of wore off now. He's not an avuncular, you know, lefty on a bike anymore. He's actually serious, and he might actually become Prime Minister if we have a general election. So? Do you know what? In a world where Donald Trump can become president, I think anything could happen, and we could end up with Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister of this country. And I think that is dangerous, because the man is, I hesitate to say unhinged, but his policies are absurd. They're insane, you know. They're not even bullshit. They're nonsense.
You know what? But though, Stefan Molyneux would say that's not an argument. It's not an argument. So.
Well, what is an argument? So why is this? Okay, let's just look at something recent. Okay, Grenfell Tower, the tragedy that happened in London, where the block of flats burnt down. Terrible tragedy. People were hurt. But it's been used as a political football by the left. You'd honestly think, to listen to their rhetoric, that Theresa May snuck in there at 3 a.m. or whatever it was with a big jerry can of petrol and set fire to the place. I mean, that's the way they're going on. It was an accident, a terrible accident, and it shouldn't have happened. It would not have happened had the cladding not been in place. But never put down to conspiracy, which you need to put down to incompetence. And I think the council were basically incompetent there. But regardless,
that's what happens when the state runs the house thing.
Yeah, who would have thunk it? If there was some sort of centralised sort of group of people who could deal with
monopoly on the use of force,
could deal with this sort of thing.
And all the guns.
But after that, when they were talking about rehousing these people who'd lost their homes, Jeremy Corbyn said, well, there's lots of rich people around who have got more than one house. They've got 2 houses, they've got 3 houses. We should, in effect, what he was advocating was commandeering people's property. Can you commandeer property? No, you can commandeer a vehicle. But it's like he wanted to just, not even compulsory purchase, just basically steal, take people's houses off them and give it to people who'd lost their house. Now, even with the best intentions in the world, that's dangerous because, as my esteemed colleague here has pointed out, as soon as you give government carte blanche to appropriate property at will, it's game over.
Right. That's the end of civilization.
It is the end of civilization.
Because they go, right, no, it's just those houses, they're not occupied. They're speculators. It's property speculators bought those houses. Well, why did they buy the houses? First of all, because the government inflated the house prices, so they turned houses into an asset. But that aside, it's like, they're not being used at the moment anyway, so we're just going to put people up there for a while, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then it's like, there's rich people that have got and there's a book there's an Ayn Rand book, your favorite one, We the Living.
Yeah.
The heroine in that book has a kitchen, and the state decides that she's overprivileged because she's got too many rooms, so they move a woman into her house. They give her one of the rooms, and then they move someone else in, and before they know it, they're living in half of a room or whatever.
Yeah.
This is like, the idea is, again, it's coming back to that fixed pie, the idea that the amount of wealth is the amount of wealth. If you need, I'm not like, if you need more housing, build more housing. But I tell you, they're not going to build more housing if the housing companies know that at any time.
Yeah.
It
can be appropriated.
It can be appropriated. So this is going to have the reverse effect of, like everything government does pretty much has the reverse effect of what is intended. You cannot admit that, and it's an easy target because people think, oh, those just rich bastards. Do you know what I mean? Those rich speculators don't, they're just exploitative, right? Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Actually, an interesting point, it's sort of an aside, but people just generally see speculators as a bad thing.
Yeah.
But on a free market, speculators actually play a very important role, because they will balance out the prices of goods over time. So let's say it's oil. Well, when the oil dips in value, the speculators will buy it up, and then it'll go up in value again, supply and demand. When it goes to high value, the speculators will start selling it, and that will mean there's more supply, so the price will come down again. So they have a normalizing effect. They're not actually necessarily evil. Now, the reason why housing is never meant to be an asset, I mean, as soon as you buy a house, you've got all these upkeep costs and things like that. But because of a shortage in the supply of housing and depressed interest rates, and money printing, people went, oh, I'll just put all my money into property, and that will be a safe bet. That was never meant to be the case. That's all because of government. Why don't the left talk about this stuff? Is it too complicated for them to wrap their head around?
Well, it's just easier. It's more populist just to tell people, that you're going to give them free shit.
Right.
We're going all those rich bastards over there. We're going to take their houses off them and we're going to give them to you. And that's how it starts. Then it's, well, you've got a caravan, in your driveway or whatever. You don't need that. You're just sitting there empty most of the year. You could have a family in there. Why have you got 2 cars?
Right.
The state can take one of those off and give it to somebody who doesn't have a car.
Why have you got a bank account?
Yeah.
That's so ridiculous to have a bank account while there's people starving. Yeah. So we should just take the money out of your bank account.
Why are you locking your bicycle up? Why lock your bicycle up? That's selfish of you. Somebody who doesn't have a bicycle could actually use that bike while you're in the shop or while you're at work. And if they don't bring it back, well, that's fine. You can just commandeer the next bike you see lying around. That's just, I know, and people don't have to go, well, that's ridiculous. That'll never happen. Well, do you know what? This shit did happen.
It's happened before several times. And it
didn't happen until it happened. It's like, people who were in a dictatorship, before it was a dictatorship, it wasn't. Right up to the point it was a dictatorship, it wasn't a dictatorship. So it can just happen very rapidly.
Yeah, it's like people know what they want, what they don't like, right? And they react against it. Like the people of Russia or the revolutionaries knew they didn't like the Tsar, right? But they didn't really know what they were doing when they got into power. No one knows how to centrally plan an economy, never mind in a...
Well, Jeremy Corbyn clearly thinks he does.
He does. And this is the thing. He wants to nationalise the railways.
Yeah.
Well,
he wants to nationalise it. As far as I'm aware, hello, that's easy for me to say. Cool. The railways are publicly owned at the moment. It's just the trains themselves that are privately operated. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, well, we've got some facts here. The infrastructure track and stations are all owned by the government, and some are even managed by the government's nationalised railway company, which is Network Rail.
Yeah.
The terms of, I don't need to read that, but the rolling stock that runs up and down the lines is procured by the government. Around 40% of rail fares, including season tickets, anytime and off-peak tickets, are regulated, so the government is in control of how much they cost. The government is also responsible for all capital spending on the railways, as also the maintenance of tracks, signalling, so when we go...
So what would be worse here? What would be better? Would it be better, as Jeremy Corbyn right to say, well, if it's going to be nationalist, you might as well nationalise it. Why? But
that's not what he's saying. He seems to... They're promoting a myth that the reason why the trains are bad here is because of privatization.
Yeah.
Right. Wait a minute. How about you just make it, or take away the laws so that anyone who wants to can buy a bus and take people from A to B, and stop messing around with Uber and the gig economy. It's like the same thing as these houses. People are like, oh, house prices are so expensive, we need to have rent controls. Like, how about you just build more freaking houses? That's what would happen on a free market. But oh no, only the government and a few small companies are allowed to build houses. Similarly, you need a license to run a bus company. What the hell? Who gives them the right to say what people do with their own vehicles and who's allowed to take someone from A to B and not? If you want the trains to improve their performance, make them have to compete.
Yeah.
Megabus, there's a their sleeper service. They were doing this overnight bus from Glasgow to London. It was cheap. You could get for maybe 30 quid or something like that. But they stopped doing it because there was lots of cheap flights. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's like they're telling people to come out of the planes because of your global warming and stuff like that, come out of their cars. But there's not diverse services of railways and bus companies as an alternative to planes and cars. So, and that's because of the government. It's all because of the government. Do you see the running theme here, people? Yeah. It's all because of the government.
And finally, I mean, on the Jeremy Corbyn thing, for me, is his recent appearance at Glastonbury,
Right.
which I only saw a brief glimpse of, but it's really tedious. Why? Well, okay. I mean, Glastonbury looks as if it's full of twats anyway. So I guess a lot of the people at Glastonbury are just the kind of people who would love to listen to Jeremy Corbyn's bullshit. But there's probably lots of people there. I mean, if I'm at a rock gig or a music festival and I've paid to see bands, why the fuck should I have to listen to Jeremy Corbyn or any other politician chuntering on about their pet peeves? You know, they should just get a podcast and do it like this.
I'm surprised that more politicians don't have podcasts by now. Do you know what I mean? Because we're at this stage in history where if the media misrepresents you, you can have your own say.
Yeah.
Maybe it's if they embrace it, then the gig's fucked.
Yeah.
Basically, as soon as politicians start accepting the new mediums like YouTube, then that really is the death of the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So we've got some comments from Dot Shots. Or Dots Hots, who knows? He says, if a private company was responsible, they wouldn't stop at just meeting the building regulations of the day because they'd be out of business if something went wrong. Yeah, and, you know, how's the government to know centrally what the best building regulations for all places and all times are? The fact is, you know, if you get a place that's a bit more shoddy, you'll pay less. And if you get a place that's a bit better, you'll pay more. And there's nothing wrong with paying a bit less if you want to put money aside for later. Moral hazard: when the government gets involved, the only consequences is more plunder and funding.
Plunder, good word. Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn is a looter.
A looter.
That is exactly what he is. Now, don't get me wrong. Theresa May is a looter as well. She actually believes in using the force of government to relieve you of your hard-earned cash in order to pay for things that she thinks, you know, that you should be robbed for. But I think Jeremy Corbyn takes it to new heights. He really is an old school lefty.
He's very left.
Yeah.
He was praising Venezuela and so forth before. Well, they're not laughing now.
I mean, did the fall of the Berlin Wall just pass these people by?
That's not real communism.
Oh my God, yeah, I keep forgetting that. Right. So are we done with Jeremy Corbyn?
I think we have to be done with him. I
only
however,
wish
the British
we were done
public
with him.
is not yet done with him.
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot more from Jeremy Corbyn.
I feel like he belongs to a different age. It's not the 70s anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Stone Age, Ice Age.
People should know better. We have the internet and Scottish Liberty podcast so that you can learn the truth.
Exactly. So going to go on to delicious dogs. First of all, question for you, Anthony. Does eating meat violate the non-aggression principle?
Right.
And I will state put my colours on the mast here. I am a dyed-in-the-wool carnivore.
Right.
You are a vegetalist.
Yeah. I'm a
you're not a militant vegetalist.
I'm not a militant hammer bashing stop meat is murder type. But do you know what? I think if we can get people to accept that spanking children is a violation of the non-aggression principle, then maybe we can discuss animals. My main problem with the I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying that most of the arguments that I've heard for why it's not are incredibly poor. Okay. So someone will say something like, well, you know, animals can't reason, therefore eating them is not a violation of the non-aggression principle. It's like,
but what about a human being who can't reason?
Exactly, right? You just pulled that out your ass. What makes whether or not they can reason the relevant data? Surely whether they can feel pain or not might be a bit more of a relevant data than whether they can reason. Like, because whether you can reason or not, if it hurts, it freaking hurts, right? Then you hear Stefan Molyneux actually said this, and it's a very poor argument. This is many years ago because he doesn't quite get the sequence of reasoning properly. He said, well, you know, we don't put an insane person in jail for killing someone because they can't reason. So, you know, we don't say, but wait a minute, there's a difference between a moral agent and a moral object. So if someone with dementia kills someone, we don't call that murder. But if you kill someone with dementia, we do call it murder.
Right. Yeah.
So just because, you know, supposing we do decide that it's better not to kill animals than to kill them, then that doesn't mean that we need to go around arresting lions for eating zebras or anything like that.
Right.
But it does mean that, you know, outside of a desert island situation, you ought not to be doing it. I wouldn't jail people for it. I think, as I've said before, if we could just get rid of farming subsidies, which artificially inflate the price of meat, artificially deflate the price of meat and dairy, including the grains which they subsidize for feed, then people would eat a lot less meat, and that would be a free market solution. Someone did ask us to do something on animal welfare.
Well, we'll probably do a whole show on it. But the reason I'm getting into this, reason I ask, I spotted an ad in the Metro today, right? It's only a small thing. It's actually for looking for volunteers, and it's for volunteer vets and veterinary assistants, and they're needed in China. And there's a thing at the bottom of it that says no to dog meat.
Right.
Okay? And what baffles me is, I mean, okay, you can say it's okay to eat meat, or you can say it's not okay to eat meat. Where does this hierarchy of taste come from? I mean, why is it appalling? Why is it okay to eat chickens, rabbits, cows, pigs, sheep? I mean, pigs are fairly intelligent.
Oh, very.
Right. So eat pigs, but people get their knickers in a twist if they find out that somebody somewhere's eating dogs or cats or whales or you name it, right? So
horses.
why horses? Like, people really get fucking offended by people eating horses, and I kind of get it, but I don't. I kind of get that you people have dogs and cats as pets, therefore there's some sort of attachment involved there. And they go, oh, that could be my dog or my cat, and it's. But there's no. I don't get the moral argument against not eating dogs. Why is eating a dog any worse than eating other kind of animal?
I mean, my dad. I remember my dad was saying that it was wonderful that they'd now banned dog meat in one Eastern country. I don't know which one it was. And it's like, well, what the hell? Like, what are you talking about? Why are you saying that's, you know, why are you for that? You eat meat. And he like automatically got defensive and couldn't respond to the argument. It was just like, oh, well, I just think, you know, people have feelings about that. I might have feelings about you eating a cow. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not cool with it personally. I would prefer if people didn't.
Well, look at what's happening in you've got militant Hindus in India at the moment, killing Muslims and killing Christians over their consumption of cows and their consumption of meat.
Holy animal.
Because to them it's a holy animal. So they're offended by that. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, if you're going to eat meat, then anything's fair game, if you forgive the pun. But if you're not, if you're going to be a vegetalist or you're going to be a vegan, I get that argument. But I find it's the inconsistency. I really cannot understand. Is it because dogs are cute and wag their tails? I know if cows done cute things, if chickens done cute things, would that make us feel differently about it? I really don't know. What do our viewers think in that? What do our listeners think in that? Is eating meat does it violate the non-aggression principle? And why? What's your reason? If you think we shouldn't eat dogs, if you think we shouldn't eat whales, if you think we shouldn't eat any cats, any other kind of animal like that, give us your reasons. Why do you think it's okay to eat a cow or a chicken, but it's not okay to eat a dog?
I had that again. It's a very similar experience. I was at dinner at my parents' house, and the cat caught a bird.
Yeah.
and my mum was really distressed by it, and you know, called her a bad girl and things like that. I was like, Mum, it's her instincts, and what's more, look what's on your plate. She was eating chicken, right? It's so irrational. It's like, I don't know. It's so what, and also if you think that eating meat is definitely not against the aggression principle and it's all fair game, why do you think that it's not of moral consideration or consequences that animals have to suffer horrendously in poor conditions and then die just so that fat people can go to McDonald's and get fatter?
Yeah.
Just to put it in the most uncharitable way, like I'm interested in hearing people's views.
I mean, if we kept dogs in conditions that we keep chickens in, there'd be a national outcry.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. So I'm not saying this in a moralistic way, but because I don't really discuss it very often, I'm interested in hearing your views.
Yeah. And if you've ever eaten a dog, if you ever tasted it, tell us what it tastes. Please don't say it tastes like chicken. Every fucking thing apparently tastes like chicken. But yeah, tell us where and when you ate it and what it tasted like. Should we move on? Or do what's anything coming in from our viewers, our listeners?
Society of the Spectacle mentions that factory farming and keeping the animals in those closed conditions necessitates the use of lots of antibiotics, and that's true. And it may be one of the causes of the superbug that wipes us out. You know, that you're giving all these and none of the antibiotics work anymore. What's more, you know, then when people stop eating meat and become vegetarian, they start getting a cold because they're so used to having their daily dose of antibiotics that they, the body is not used to it.
Well, I guess for libertarians, there's a bigger question, because if it did violate the non-aggression principle, then is it then right for government to make legislation and make laws and enforce it through violence?
Yeah, and I personally wouldn't be comfortable with that, even though I'm not comfortable with people eating animals either. Although I keep it to myself because it's kind of polite. Yeah. So it would, but as I say, I think, do you believe that societies advance? You know, we had Thomas Jefferson writing about the abolition of slavery while he owned 200 slaves himself.
Right.
You know, James Madison wrote there should be freedom of religion into the Constitution and owned 100 slaves. So the brightest minds of the time had slaves. So the thing is, if you do believe that societies advance, then I think we're a long way off from the point where you can't even get people to stop. Like, I mean, look at the schools, right? We say it's all about the children. We send children to school for 11 to 13 years to get bossed around, told what to do, their self-esteem propagandized. They either come out of it a compliant people pleaser or a rebel or some, you know. I think the human race could be doing a lot better.
Yeah.
Even with the information we have, we don't need to make any astonishing discoveries. We've got a lot of evidence on how to educate people. We've got a lot of evidence on free markets working, and we don't need these farming subsidies. I mean, the meat and dairy farmers are always asking for, we can't sell our milk at a profit. Good. Go out of business then. Yeah. You know, change your freaking job. I wouldn't be adverse to, as an interim position, while you stop those subsidies, to give that cash for people to retrain, since they've been brought up to be dependent on it.
Right.
But they should go out. If they can't turn over a profitable good, they should go out of business. The price of meat and dairy will go up, less people will consume it, and that would be a step in the right direction.
Okay, so again, the market's the solution, not government.
I think so.
Well, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's this week's and I've decided that this week's Cuckold Doodle Dude is your favourite and mine, Justin Trudeau. Yeah,
see
it's
that
that man.
You see that?
Yeah.
He's always actually the cuckle doodle dude.
Yeah,
we just don't call him out every week because we need some diversity.
We do need a diversity of cucks. But he was at Edinburgh University this week, and he gave a rousing speech, apparently. Obviously, at Edinburgh University, it must have been a really wanky speech because he couldn't have triggered anybody in other safe space. Edinburgh University is one of these universities that's got safe spaces, trigger warnings.
It's a breeding ground for the worst, least favourite type of rabid feminist man-hater. And Edinburgh's absolutely full of 20-somethings that have these radical views, more so than Glasgow is.
Yeah, entitled bints.
They're very privileged themselves.
What's the male version of a bint? Cucks. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told graduates to be bold, be brave, be open to incredible opportunities, and be really sensitive and snowflake
original
as well. Yeah, so he got an honorary degree in being a cuckold. I'm
interested in my honorary degree in economics. I think I've earned mine.
I think you could get a degree in smoothie making. Okay. If there was such a thing. It probably is. There's probably a whole module on it at Napier.
And you can get government funds to send you through it as well.
Yeah, help yourself to other people's money to get a degree in smoothie making that you could get just by experimenting and making through. So he's from the poorly titled Liberal Party of Canada. Yeah, these people should get sued under some sort of trades description type thing if that such a thing exists in Canada. If there's any Canadians out there, let us know. Tell us your favourite cuck moment from Justin Trudeau. He's got so many of them to choose from. Where is he from? Is he a Quebecois? Is Justin Trudeau a Quebecois? I'm guessing he is because he's got a French name.
Of Canada, unless you can speak both English and French.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
You cannot be Prime Minister or President.
Yeah, because you can't get into a high role because people will just not accept it.
Shocking.
You have to be very good at being bilingual.
So yeah, anyway, Justin Trudeau, for no apparent reason other than you're just a part of a party that's called the Liberal Party when it's not liberal in any way, shape or form, you are this week's Cock-a-doodle-dood. So do we have anything else for our lovely listeners?
Well.
And viewers.
I think there was something, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, we can save that shit for next time.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's new? Like, how do you think the Liberty movement is going?
Well, that's a good question. The Liberty movement, where in particular? I think it's doing very well worldwide.
Okay.
I don't know if it's doing particularly well in any given place. Scotland, as you know, it's an uphill battle. Yeah. It's a struggle to try and get. There are lots of people out there on the internet. You're all hiding. There's lots of people online who are libertarians, but there ain't that many. Well, it's very rare. I mean, how often do you? I mean, I very rarely meet anybody whose opinions coincide with my own. Never mind somebody who can actually say, "Oh, actually, I'm a libertarian."
But there's a few people that are sort of libertarian minded, but they never really. I've at least made
there's a couple, but
didn't know that they were libertarian until they were introduced to the word. But,
I guess. I mean, you've got what was the Conservatives for Liberty?
Yeah, and I wish that they wouldn't.
Yeah, I just wish. Look, just fucking make a choice, motherfucker. Make a choice.
Are you a conservative?
Are you a cuck-servative? Or are you a libertarian?
Libertarian.
Yeah, a libertarian.
Yeah.
Make your fucking mind up.
Yeah.
You've got Theresa May, who's booted you in the peas. You've got, what's her face in Scotland? That looks a bit like Kim Jong-il. You've got Ruth Davidson in Scotland, who I honestly don't know. I think she just went to join the Labour Party and walked into the wrong office.
Right.
and ended up by
She's
some
very
comedy of errors
as the leader.
as the leader of the Conservative
She
Party.
had to come
I
left.
mean, she's quite formidable in debate. I mean, I'm not disparaging her her aptitude for the job, but I am disputing her Conservative credentials. Never mind Libertarian credentials, because she doesn't have any. I mean, I did remember when I ran against her. I ran against Ruth Davidson in the Scottish elections for the MSP job. She was running in Edinburgh Central, which she won by 500 votes. I got a total of about 130, was it? 130 of it. Okay.
Better than a boot in the buzz.
Better than a boot in the stones. And as we were about to go up onto the podium thing to get to get the election result read out, I said to her, Ruth, it's not too late to join the Libertarian Party. And she turned around and she went, oh, well, there's a Libertarian streak in all of us.
A healthy Libertarian streak.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't make it a bit more fucking obvious, could
yeah,
you?
please.
You know, please.
So I would like just to encourage any Libertarians who haven't, please get on meetup.com, get on Facebook.
We need activists.
We
need activists.
Link up with people in your area, even if it's just for a social to start with. Because it's like, when people are going to change their political opinions, if they do, they're also going to be changing their values. And you have got to have community to bring them into. And I was trying to encourage people along to our meetups in Scotland. And wherever you are in the world, meet with other people face to face. It's not nice feeling excluded. If you've got any stories of good Libertarian meetups and things that you've gone to from all over the world, please leave them in a YouTube comment for us. I want to say that we actually had some fans of the show come to visit.
Yeah, I came to one of the Libertarian meetups.
Yeah. So a thank you to Matt and Stacey for coming out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out. So they were touring in Scotland. They got in touch with me because they liked the show, and we gathered the troops. And you want to be able to make people feel welcome.
Yeah.
So you need community, and it's good for you. It's good for you.
Good for you.
It's spiritually
good for
you.
you.
So
good for you.
Don't just sit behind a computer screen. I'm
going to say as well that we had a little bit of a state visit about a week ago as well. We had Vít Jedlička of Liberland, the president of Liberland. If you're not familiar with the Liberland project, check it out. Just type Liberland into Google and you'll find probably the Wikipedia entry, and you'll also find their website. Liberland is basically a strip of land between Croatia and Serbia. It's about 7 square kilometers, and they've set it up as a libertarian micronation. They have a flag, they have a constitution, and they have a president who's Vít Jedlička. And he visited our libertarian group in Edinburgh, and we had a great night. And we have some footage and an interview with Vít Jedlička, and hopefully we're going to get that up soon so that you can watch that. He's an interesting guy, a lot of good things to say, and we wish the Liberland project all the best, and it was great to see them there at our Libertarian meetup as well. But yeah, we need you. Come on, get out the closet, you people, and get to the meetups and start getting active, because it's just not going to happen on its own. So until next time, don't be a righty
or a lefty. Be Libertarians. Thanks for everyone who tuned in live.